New buildings put solid roots in the ground.
Hudson's is a world of its own.
Busy shoppers, a million footprints on the marble steps. J.L. Hudson's was Detroit.
It's sad to see this grand old structure that once symbolized the Motor City come crashing down.
And there is no Hudson's building anymore.
It is gone.
The only way to grow is going vertical. So I think when you say 5 or 10 years from now even, you're going to see the whole skyline is going to be completely different.